everyone, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with Adil Amarsi, and you can find him at ADILAMARSI.com. And Adil has been writing sales copy professionally since he turned 18 in late 2007, and during that time he has broken countless records and developed an infamous reputation for the effectiveness of his copy. And we're going to talk about researching your prospects. We're going to start about starting a successful digital business. So many things. We are here with the Alchemist of Persuasion himself. Adil, nice to finally meet you, man.
Great to finally meet you too, dude. It's been a long time coming.
You told me, yeah. Apparently you've bought some of my products and some of my plugins, and you tell me that you have what you call some insane records that have given you some notoriety in this space. So to make sure that we keep listening, to make sure that we are listening to the right person, can you tell us about some of these huge, impressive achievements you have?
Okay, so we'll start with one of my favorite ones. Back in 2016, one of my clients and friends was writing a webinar to a dead list. They were using Webinar Jam at the time. And the only reason this is prevalent was because Mike Vilsaim and Andy Jenkins, may he rest in peace. By the way, guys, I apologize. That is my cat. He has decided to wake up and decide to meow during my interview, so we may be joined by him. But yeah, so the reason I say that is because Vilsaim and Jenkins were basically doing a lot of stuff back then with Webinar Jam. And one of the coolest things that happened was I wrote this landing page, and it did a 90.8% conversion rate on the traffic that we were sending to it. So it kind of just got really interesting on how all these like little records kind of build up, because we had that one, and then Phil Sam actually called my client and said, "What the hell did you do?" And he was like, "I just hired Adil," so that got my name out there. I had another client that had a dead list that they hadn't mailed in 4 years, and they had a new continuity program. So we reactivated that list, went through the mailing sequence that I put them through, really got their story out to them, put the sales letter together for a $70 a month continuity program, because it was in the UK, it's £50. We sold that, and that letter stayed converting at 83% conversion rate for about 2 months, and our retention rate was 7 months before we had our first dropout. So from dead list to reactivated and giving us money, and I think we raised something in the region of about £15,000 a month, so like $25,000. Well, now today's inflation about $23,000 a month, which nothing too bad about.
Yeah. I mean, this is some impressive stuff. I'm hearing a few things from you. I'm hearing that you really know your numbers, that you didn't just say, we made this web page and we sold a bunch. You're like, we sold this amount, this percentage, it was this price point, this cash flow per month. And I'm also hearing from you a few things about getting people's stories out there. And then in those couple of case studies there, you mentioned about reactivating a dead list. And is that something that you do commonly, or is that just like every now and then is that whole dead list reactivation technique?
It really depends on the client. If it's a client that I know that has an absolutely killer offer and they're just really bad with their list, I'll say, hey, let's reactivate that dead list. Let's put something in there and see what we can get coming out from that list. But it takes a lot of analysis. Like, I really have to know the client, I have to know their voice. We have to figure out what's going on with their list first, because for some people they can say, I have a dead list. In reality, all they've done is they've mailed that list nothing but good value for 2 years and never made a sales promo. So it's not a dead list, it's just a list that's never been pitched to. So you got to like get them used to getting pitched to. But that was like one of the key things. The others to do with like stories and how they all come about. I do have to drag the stories out of a lot of people. It's almost every client, because some people tell you their story and you're like, that's not your story. They'll be like, yeah, no, so I kind of came from this place where I was in a really bad way, and then this happened, and then now I'm like really good and I can help a bunch of people. Well, that's everyone's story. What's your particular story? What did you do? What was the thing that broke you? That's what I want to know. What was the thing that broke you before that put you in this path? And it's a great way of actually figuring it out and then finding out how someone actually knew their point of no return was there. So for instance, Robert, if I was to ask you, what was it that made you go online? Like, what was the thing that drove you to go online?
What drove me to go online was researching what a computer programmer career path looked like. And the path was either stay a code monkey, stay someone that makes 30 grand to 50 grand per year, or move up into the higher management, the businessy side of things, which I had no interest with either. And always having a boss, always having set hours, always being on call, none of that sounded fun. I like more of the freedom and the being able to build things.
Yeah, that sounds a lot more fun. So you kind of knew at that point. So from that perspective, where was that point of no return where like you kind of went there? And what I mean by point of no return, like we all have that moment where like, yeah, I knew from that point on. But there's a real point of no return. It's like when you get your first sale or when you hit a certain threshold or something just happens in your life and you're like, yeah, that life of going back to working for someone else is just that door is shut. This is the way going forward. What was that moment for you?
That moment was I was in my office at work. I opened up my bank account and it was just over $40,000. And for some reason, seeing just that number, it seemed like finally I had to do it. And for the many of the months leading up to that, I had always kind of like written new goals and written out pros and cons. And I was worried that I would give up on my dreams. And I was in the middle of a project where there was this software called SharePoint, which is just like made by Microsoft. It's a total nightmare, and they trained someone to do it. He hated it. He quit. They trained someone else to do it. He hated it. He quit. And then I was the new guy, and I just had all these worries. And then I was started going to networking events, internet marketing events, and I was using up pretty much all my vacation and sick days to go to these events because like you fly in a day to travel there and back, and I had one coming up and I was going to miss it because I didn't have any more vacation days left. And so that day, that afternoon, it was just all those little things combined. But it was mostly that I wanted to go to this event. I knew I needed that to continue on the trajectory I was on. I'd already had a list, already made a bunch of sales, had products, but it was just like there wasn't enough time. There wasn't any rules or there wasn't any freedom in there to go to that event. And then there was that, and I saw there was like financial cushion, not a huge amount of money, but enough to, if the worst
Yeah.
happened, I could live for a few months. So then I went into my boss's office and gave him my notice, and then that was the point of no return. Was that afternoon, the event coming up, seeing the bank balance.
Okay, cool. So do you remember what event it was?
Huh? What? It was. I think it
Wasn't
might
a
have
big seminar,
been
was
like the first Warrior event, Eric
it?
Louviere.
Yeah.
I think
Oh
Austin,
shit.
Texas,
Yeah,
two
that
thousand
that
eight.
was a yeah, that was a while ago because that was the year I actually kind of started getting into the IM world. Was that year? I remember seeing it. So you got like the Warrior event. Now, if I was writing a copy to this, just as an idea of how I'd be pulling out the story for my client, there's a third step, which is where you link all the bits and pieces together. But just from this alone, like a headline that I could really grab if you say we were pitching you to your audience, give me a product you'd be selling, like anything. I don't really care what it is.
Action pop up.
Okay, action pop up. Give me just the quick benefits to it.
The benefits is you drop it on any WordPress plugin or page. It creates a pop up box. It's meant for opting into your email list. So once someone opts in, the pop up does not appear. You can create custom offers depending on the landing page, the blog post, the category, things like that. Different designs.
So basically, I don't mean this in any negative sense whatsoever. It's like the closest iteration I could think of it would be like, say, back in the day, pop-up domination. Like,
Okay.
but this is way better. So like, it's a way more advanced system and works. I'm just like mentally trying to clarify, like, that's exactly what you mean, correct? Like, it has a good pop-up. It has like redirects on the back end, and essentially once it goes in, people opt in. It just doesn't show up again.
Yeah, I can use something more recent if you want to use like a modern day thing. I kind of the more I
Any
hear about that, the more I don't like that. I was using an old product. Okay, so
okay,
the
cool.
promo that we're mailing this week is a course called Book Formula, which is about how to get a mock-up book made, how to get a book put on Lulu and Kindle, and the idea is that every business needs a book. A lot of people want a book, but then it's a huge slog to go through a book. So there's worksheets, there's checklists, there's a step-by-step process where you make a few decisions, answer a couple of questions, and then you have a book created that you can add to over time. So it's called
Okay.
Book Formula.
Okay, so if you're doing book formula, and let's say this is just a promo, it wouldn't mean the sales letter, but let's just say it's an email that's going out. And the way that I would do this would be something along the lines of um, your origin matters would be the subject line, and the email would immediately go into it's like, hey Rob, sorry, hey James, it's Rob here, and or like, hey James, it's Rob here, and I was speaking to a friend of mine on a podcast, and the idea of origin stories really just came up to me, and I wanted to share this origin story with you simply because I don't talk about it often enough, and I don't share it frequently enough with the people in my circle. And the reason I want to share it with you is because there are some very valuable lessons, and particularly knowing how and when to make the jump from either full-time employment or part-time employment to full-time entrepreneurship. Because far too often we see people essentially jump off the cliff and expect to fly. Unfortunately, they don't. A lot of people plummet and they have to fight their way back up to the top. So what I'm going to share with you in a moment is going to show you the situation that had to come together for me to create my, my exit from my corporate life, but more importantly, how that set me up perfectly for what happened next. And then you'd go into the events of what happened. I was working like this. I looked at this. I didn't want to do this other thing. I wanted freedom. I built a couple of things. I sold a couple of things. I had a mailing list. And it wasn't until this day, the day that you described to us, you tell them about that day, and then you kind of like immediately come off the bottom and say there are so many lessons, and you name two or three, and then the way you link this to the book formula project thing that you're doing is you essentially take that same story and say, I could write a full book about this, but like writing many books, it's a long slog. You are not going to enjoy it. It is going to make you cry at times, even if you don't know what you're doing, especially. But if you've written a book before, if you have a process, if you have something you can keep adding to over time, going back and editing and still making sure it works well while keeping you accountable, well, that is the best way for you to actually tell your story. And instead of sending you to 150 different places, trying to get all these checklists made, and essentially reading over 150 blog posts or over 10 blog posts just to get a basic sample of a template of how to keep you accountable, we've gone ahead and designed a system for you. Go here and check out this video where we explain what our system is. And that's simply how I would transition using just part of that story into, like, say, an email. And you can do this on a grander scale with a webinar or a sales letter, depending.
Awesome. I was kind of, as you were explaining that, all these kind of ahas came into my head as far as all these components that you put in there, and even from the beginning, things like the imagery, right? Like the about to jump off the cliff, and you didn't just tell us things. You were saying, we're about to tell you this, and you even listed things like the possible alternatives that you could use, right? You could go and read all these different blog posts, or the better thing where we've combined it for you. So this is making a lot of sense, and it also makes a lot of sense how you're saying that some of these clients that you go to, maybe the story that they think they need to say, or the story that they tell you is not the right one, right? It's kind of like in the same way that the voice that you hear you say is not the voice other people hear, or like the way you think your facial expression is versus what people see, and like all that sort of stuff is different, right? There's how you see yourself and how the world sees yourself, and likewise there's what people might think is the right attention getting story, persuasive copywriting thing to say, but then from the outside looking in, it's completely different. It's what I'm hearing from
Massively.
you saying all this.
Yeah, massively. And it's usually product dependent as well. Like, this is something a lot of people don't look at, is you can use the same story. Like your story, I wouldn't use that story in a sales letter. I would use that in an email. But if I was writing about a story saying about how it was about your book, say we were selling your book and we were writing the sales letter of how you were going to detail your origin and rise to the top, there we go. Yeah. Wait, what's your book title?
WWHW.
Oh, nice. I like that. What if? I do love what if. It's one of my favorite words.
Right, unlimited possibilities.
Massive unlimited possibilities. One of my favorite. Again, that's the reason whenever I get into a bad rut, my brain is like, what if it was good? And then just find a way to make it good. But if we were using that story as well to sell your book, I'd put that on the sales video to why follow you. Because your story just says, I've been around long enough that I've seen practically everything. And more importantly, I'm willing to tell you something that my contemporaries are just not willing to tell you, because they'll tell you that it's possible to do anything. Yeah, quit your job. Go try and have this adventure of a lifetime and just like essentially shirk responsibility and just try and do things. Versus, no, think about it logically. Save up money, make sure you have things in place, make sure you have a system working, and then make the exit. Because at that point, you're essentially mitigating as much risk as possible.
And yeah, and even as we're kind of explaining this, what comes to mind for me is that it's taken a long time to maybe think back and repeat through this story and get down to those kind of lower layers, because a big part of that whole like going into business on my own, going to events was the breaking out of my own shell, right? Because there was the one path of just sitting behind the computer, being safe, being not the marketer or spokesperson, and then there was maybe another path of being a little bit more uncomfortable and being more of a maybe like a larger than life or someone who communicates to others. And then what comes to mind there is like kind of tapping into that and relating to people who, like, since we're on the topic of the book, maybe a lot of people are held back having a book because they have that fear of putting themselves out there, of being in front of the camera instead of in front of the computer. And so yeah, even just us kind of talking about the kind of the same thing, or it's like getting into those deeper kind of emotional layers that other people can relate to.
Oh yeah, massively, and that's something that I find with copy that's missing quite a lot of the time. There is a lack of psychological understanding, if that makes sense. I know a lot of copywriters, what they tend to do is go with, um, we're pulling like on cliches, we're writing in a certain style because we were told to write in that style. There's no questioning to why the psychological usage of certain words forces you to look at different perspectives. And essentially, like one of the things I teach as well is how, in say your first email, by setting up a certain sequence of events and steps for someone to take in the welcome email, it immediately repositions you as a direct authority that cannot be questioned. And by doing so, it has you, it sounds really weird, but it gives you control over the situation and how you can influence them.
And
It's,
there's a lot of, oh yeah, go ahead.
oh no, 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 please go ahead. You were saying?
I'm just saying, when like this topic keeps coming up here with us of like sales letter versus email copywriting, right? And it seems like from what I'm hearing from you is there's a lot of setup in the email, so that way the sales letter is less of a barrier to get through. And it also seems like from you explaining this is that like there's more time to get into some of the more of the deeper story and some of like the tangents, and it seems like we can spend more time and have more fun in an email, and there's more possibility to make mistakes or put out things that maybe aren't quite right versus a sales letter where there might be bottlenecks, or a sales video where we might lose them at some point. So am I getting that right? Just like the with
Yeah.
the email, you can kind of get crazier and have more fun.
Oh, for sure. Like your emails essentially, like to quote Gary Vaynerchuk, your emails are essentially all your little jabs, and then of course your sales letter is the right hook. Essentially, that's what you're doing. Your emails are setting up and constantly pre-selling. They're giving ideas, and it's this whole idea. So the one word that I have a problem with is the word value, because it's not given a direct value in its own right. The word value is valueless because it's used so much, and it has no definition. So a definition that I'd give for value is providing an emotional respite despite what's going on in the world. So that's what essentially you're doing. By adding value, you're either helping someone improve their life, help improve their health, their relationships, their spirituality, whatever it is, you're giving them an improvement of some form that they've asked for. But also at the same time, don't forget, laughter is also an emotional trigger that you can use. So laughter is an improvement. Someone might be having a really bad day and they end up laughing at your email. They have a great day. And I've tested this with my own list. I sent out an email about how, well, I didn't send out this email to my entire list, but to a very small portion of my list to test it. I sent out an email roughly around how when I was younger, I would prank myself if I forgot, like, 'cause I had to take some medication and that would send me a little bit like loopy, so I'd forget. So I'd start pranking myself by leaving little post-it notes and getting myself to go on treasure hunts. And it's just something really stupid and ridiculous. I told that story through my email to my audience. I got so many emails back going, dude, please go back to doing stand up. This is really, really good. We can actually feel your pitch, your tone, your setting, and everything just was correct, and the punchline just had us laughing.
And
So
but yeah, it's
just
like you're
that,
getting into like the self-deprecation, the things that are unique to you, the things that are relatable. And I mean that right there, what you said, that's a lesson that took me at least 5 or 6 years to for it to finally get through to me, that it's really tempting to not have any of our own selves or our own personality in our marketing, to be not make any mistakes, be super professional, but who wants that? And how is that going to get noticed? Versus you kind of dig deep and you find those old childhood memories, or those mistakes you made, or the like kind of unexpected things that have happened to you. You throw those in, and there's those are some fun ways to wake these people up. And like
yeah,
you mentioned earlier, how you sometimes have these clients that they're stuck in the friend zone, right? They're doing all the jabs and they're not doing any of the right hooks. They're just providing value. And I mean, I've been on lists like that where every day they're like, "Hey, there's this new freebie today, another freebie today," and I'm thinking like, you're training me to never click, to never buy, just because I don't know, like maybe they're like afraid of crossing that line. And so, I mean, is the answer just that simple? If you're dealing with a client where they're emailing but they're not selling, is the answer just like to bridge the gap by putting in this humor in their stories, or is there more to it?
yeah. There's quite a few more things. There's about 7 different types of emails you can use to break up the monotony. And humor is one of them. The other ones are like inspirational stories and journeys, but they have to have meaning. So if someone is constantly just mailing you freebie after freebie after freebie after freebie, or like value after value after value, what I would end up doing is I would just send an email with the subject line, just like screech in like the little what was it, shift 8, the little stars in between, and we'll put the word screech, which is usually like a car stop, and it's like dot dot dot, get out the car. And immediately I would go into an email around, you've been riding along this free train for far too long. I realize you haven't bought a ticket. Now it's time to have a little bit more fun. I mean, just say for the last couple of for the last while, I go straight into the mittens. For the last while, I've been told that all I had to do was provide value and help people, and that would help a lot. Don't get me wrong, providing value makes me feel great, but what really makes me feel great is being able to do this and help others while still ultimately having a full-time business with you guys here. And then you can just say, if you still want to stay on this mailing list, great, stay on. But no, we're going to be changing things around. Click this link to confirm your email address so we know that you're actually staying on. If not, we'll be deleting your email address in the next 30 days. Look forward to hearing from you. Reply back if you want to speak to me. Speak soon, name. And then the next email would go into a little bit more self-deprecation, such as, because it's going to a confirmed list, now you can start building your personality. Like, a lot of people ask me how I actually got into spirituality, and they think I've always been spiritual, but the reality could be I wasn't. In fact, I was the kid in the back of the class eating glue, eating paste right out of the pot with like the little, because that was just me. I was like a little paste eating kid. And funny to believe that my teachers never thought I'd amount to anything, but here I am able to figure out more. In fact, the big shift happened to me when this experience happened. Story. Check back for tomorrow. I'll give you the second half. Second half of the story comes in. Now you can just say, by the way, if you really want to, say it's a meditation product, if you really want to transcend that meditational level and really take yourself to the new, to a high level, you may not know this, but we've developed a program around it. It's a bestseller. Go here, check it out. They go in, they buy. Now you start bridging that gap through. You start conditioning the new list to start buying. And even if you get
And
unsubscribes, fuck them.
right. I mean, yeah, it's like if you have those people who are unsubscribed, I tell myself that they would have left eventually, and also that if we have more people coming in than going out, then what's the difference? And it's a real trip, and it's a lot of fun to see you think on your feet here. And it seems like just kind of hearing you talk and kind of like just taking in a little bit of your process, it seems like there's a good blend here, right? There's a blend of, I'm sure there's like the templates, like you said, there's those types of emails that you could send. And then I'm sure that you rely a little bit on maybe like a little bit of an internal mental swipe file on like specific phrases that work, but then you're also just putting in some of that creativity. And that was like a huge lesson for me when I always thought things had to be one or the other, right? I thought that if I sent an email, I had to either be just the nicest guy and just giving away the farm or saying, here, buy my stuff, but then somewhere in the middle of blending that value, that overused phrase value, plus selling things, if you have kind of that murky gray area, it's more fun. And then also just in the same way, hearing and seeing you come up with these emails and saying this sequence, that sequence, there's the tried and true phrases, the cliches, but then it's also you mix it in with your own personal story and also a little bit of common sense. And I'm sure like kind of the years of experience of feeling like what's a good email, what's a bad email, what works and what doesn't work. And then once it's all out there, then you look at the data, right? You look at the open rates, the clicks, the conversion rates, and so it's like you kind of that whole term of the alchemy, right? That you kind of have in your branding. It makes sense because you're mixing in all these things that kind of each serve a purpose, and then all together, it's magical.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that very much. And there's so many other things that we don't have the time to get into, but like just some incredible stuff on like how to figure out how to find your voice and what your voice, what your audience already reacts to, and how to like tune into that. It's like the
Right.
craziest stuff, but it takes time.
And finding the sweet spot. Yeah, and it's like, you mentioned Gary Vee earlier. You look back at Gary Vee's earliest videos, and he's super awkward, he's super nervous, he's not the Gary Vee we know today. He evolved into that. And like you said, we're getting close to the end of our conversation here, and I want to make sure that we get to plugging you, promoting you, telling people about your courses, blog, podcast services, and all that. But as we're getting to that, I'm sure you've seen all kinds of crazy things done right, not done right. Is there
Yeah.
a common mistake that happens with web
Uh,
pages, sales letters, email campaigns, marketing in general? A common mistake that just drives you crazy that you say in this day and age shouldn't be happening?
Three.
Anything like that?
There are
Ooh,
three. Three big three. I'll give you all three right now. Number one
okay.
is the use of the word learn. Please drop it. Please stop using that word. It is a dumb word. If you're selling to people that did not like school, don't use a word associated with school. Tony Robbins literally says this. People avoid pain and go towards pleasure. I'll hit you with this one, Rob. If I said to you, you're about to learn how to write copy from a world-class copywriter, or you're about to uncover the secrets of a world-class copywriter directly from the horse's mouth, which one grabs you better?
I like uncovering the secrets.
Right, it's because it sounds more adventurous and more pleasing. Psychologically, also, there's not your brain isn't unconsciously going, this sounds like school, pump the brakes. Doesn't have that. So that's mistake number one. People using that. You can use it if you're speaking about yourself. Like after going through painstaking, like the amount of learning I had to go through over the last years was painful. Was incredibly excruciating. That way you can go ahead and make that word at work for you, but it's still painted in a negative light. So it works in your favor because it becomes agreeable, and you get confirmation bias that learning and schooling is terrible and you never liked it, and neither did they. So it bonds you. It's quite a lovely little subconscious thing that happens. The second is people are afraid. For the love of goodness, stop being afraid. Stop being afraid of telling people your story. Stop being afraid of asking for sales. Just be direct. And this plays perfectly into the third thing. It's something that I know I've developed for a while, and it's one of the things I can articulate quite well. It's remove as much fear as humanly possible from the buying process from your customers. Tell them what they're going to see next. Be upfront with them. Be very, very straightforward. I mean, one of the craziest things, I did a soft launch in May for a course that I'm launching in July on email sequences. And I remember on the sales video, I had like the worst day ever. I decided to shoot the sales video on a one take. So it was just like mistakes everywhere. Didn't even edit, just went straight through. But my upsells were the things that were the ridiculous things. So front end, we converted at 17%. Not a bad number, but we only had about 120 people see the page. So not a bad number overall. But our upsell process, we sold 87% of everything in our inventory, and that included 3 extra products. Like they just bought everything, and the reason simply because I looked at it. The sales videos were being watched, but they were only 60 seconds apiece, And the reason was every time I did the sales video, I told you what was going to happen next. Like, hey, by the way, once you click the link and once you click the link and complete your order, on the next page you'll see another video because I have like one more thing to talk. I have like two more things to talk to you about. So be aware. They go to that next page, like, hey, so there's one more video where you have to look at my stupid face. Here's what I've got for you. Here's what it does. Go buy if you want it. Yes or no. Great. It'll help you out in these ways. Superb. And there's one more video. Go to the last video. Hey, so I'm developing this other course right now. You can get in for this price. If you want it, cool. If you don't, no worries. I'll see you on the challenge. Peace out. Have a great day. I'll see you on the 20th. I'll see you on the 4th of May or something like that. And I just ran with it. I just launched it. And we did well. Like the thing converted. We got a crap load of sales out of it. And the whole reason it worked was quite simply, I was removing every barrier out there for what would happen next. So people were prepared for a pitch. They were prepared to see my face. They weren't being caught like out the blue. So those are the three things. Ditch learn.
Don't say learn, don't be afraid, and then remove the fear from others. And those are three very simple concepts, but they're so simple that most of us don't know to do them. And that the whole thing of I cringe as well when I see people use that term learn, and there are all these things that like we do, but we don't even realize it. And way long ago when I first did the hard work, like you said, there of like learning, and I hated it and had to go through all this stuff, there were some really painful ahas there, like these just bottleneck words that we shouldn't be using. And then there was all these different exercises, like someone said, do a control F, do a search on your sales copy and see how many negative phrases you use. See how many times you say don't, you say not. And it was just like littered with them. And I realized, there's a way to say the same things that have the same meat and content, but say it in a more agreeable, a more polished way. And there were things like, write sentences, but make sure every sentence only has exactly 7 words, no more nor less. And it was painful at first, but then it made me realize that some words don't matter, some words do matter, and there's a way to kind of work within a box. You have your limitations, but then you have your creativity within that box. And then also that thing right there of telling people what's on the other side of the page. That's like, I'm going to go look back at my sales letters and just make that quick sweep, because it's so simple, it's easy for us to forget. Just saying, when you click on this, you'll see the checkout page on the next side. And then here's the upsell. And if you go to this, then you'll see this other screen. You'll see the members area. You'll see the registration form when you click on the next thing. So simple. And we might even have seen other successful marketers, maybe even a campaign you did, do this, but it just flew right by us because it worked on us, but we just didn't notice it. So yeah, these are all really simple things that we all need to be doing, staying away from these terrible words like learn, and then doing things like saying what's on the other side of that page, so that way it's a smooth transaction. So man, we covered all kinds of crazy things. There's so many things for people to go back and listen to this episode 3 or 4 times and get the new nuggets. But as far as where you can help them, right, because we're talking about providing value, how do you fit into some of these people's businesses? Do you have courses? Do you have consulting? What do you think is relevant today as far as what you provide?
I'd say my consulting services, and if you want to buy one of my courses, you could do. My consulting services are actually probably the best ones. So I will, full disclosure, I charge a crap load of money per hour. It starts at $2,000 and goes upward for the hour of my consulting time. So what I've done is I found the only reason I've set it to this number is because it's more than enough time, and it gives people a skeptical enough time to think that it takes me it takes me more than 15 minutes to do this. So what I do is, if you head on over to my website, which is adilamarsi.com, and go to the contact form, you'll see a place for consultation services. On there, it will give you instructions, such as what we do is you send me a gift from my Amazon wish list. And the guarantee is, if in that 15-minute call that we have following you sending me an email, sending me all your business and telling me that you're buying me something, because I have to send you back all the details with it. Once I've got all those details, we hop on a Zoom call, and in about 15 minutes, I will have the answer that you need for your copy. It could be that we need to do the entirety of your story run in 15 minutes. It could be that we just verbalize a sales letter for you in 15 minutes. Or it could be that we do a sales letter, opt-in page, and some Facebook ads. Who knows what has happened? stranger things have happened. I think the quickest sales that I've ever written, verbalized in perfection was 4 minutes and 22 seconds. Like from start to
Nice.
finish, not knowing the person, got it done. They just looked at me and went, so what are we supposed to do for the remaining like 10 minutes and like 10 and a half minutes? I was like, oh, I told you it's not going to take me long. So I told you come with more than one question. So if you guys are interested in that, please go ahead and hit me up on my website. And if
Fantastic.
you're
And that
done,
what,
sorry.
oh, I was just going to say that that is adilamarsi.com, adilamarsi.com, and you go to that contact form, and then you follow those instructions to send that gift from the Amazon wish list to Adil, and then set up that call. And I love how, I mean, we've heard again and again you just coming up with these ideas, rattling off these things. We can hear how quickly you work, and how you just like you get in that mode, you get excited, you figure it out, and it's done. There's no painstakingly crafting something over months. It's just done, and that's it.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the worst parts is when I sit down to actually write copy because I'm so in my head about things. Because if I'm passionate about something, I want to make it like I go over it like 10, 20, 30 times before I actually mail it to a client. Whereas if it's something like a consulting, because I'm so out of my own head and I know I can get something done quickly, you end up getting more insane results. Now, before we actually go, I did want to say one last thing. If you are interested in any of the products or services that we offer, just mention Rob's name on the email so it comes directly through to me, and the subject line so I know it's you. Otherwise, it'll end up in my spam folder and I'll never be able to speak to you lovely people.
And who wants that? Okay, then
All right.
tell Adil that Robert Plank sent you, and we'll see everyone at adilamarsi.com. Anything to say, just so that we end here with a bang, not a whimper? Any final words of advice before we close the book on this?
Have fun and tell plenty of stories.